The Minnesota Vikings have been around since 1961. And I just want them to win a damn Super Bowl before I die. Welcome to Before I Die with Judd and Jesse on Purple Daily and Score North.
Just one, you guys. Just one before I die. That's all. We're not greedy people here in the state of Minnesota. We are just asking humbly, passive aggressively, probably for one damn Super Bowl. I'm Jesse Pierce, writer for NHL.com, hosting Before I Die on Score North with all of our fantastic Purple Daily content alongside our very own sports dad, Mr. Judd Zulgad, Mr. Positivity, generally speaking, right? That's how we know him. We love him. And over here we got producer Ross. He's back in the hot seat. Ross, why do you love the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, the pain lets me know I'm still alive, Judd and Jesse.
Just so beautiful. We've had some time, you guys, to recoup from the pain that was a 34-28 loss at the Philadelphia Eagles. Minnesota Vikings now 0-2, but this is what we wrote it up as, right? This is exactly how it was designed. The last time the Vikings were 0-2 and made the playoffs, 2008, led largely by Ross, Judd, who?
Gus Frerotte.
Gus Frerotte, baby.
Until they benched him.
Yes, that's exactly
I covered that team. I was covering that team.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was on the beat back then. Uh-huh. When you two were
season,
just youngins, I was on the beat.
That season basically ended with the T-Jack jump pass interception, right? Is that Asante Samuel? Who picked that off in the playoffs?
It was an out route, right? And Asante Samuel housed it, I thought, with he jumped the route, I thought. Now, I'm getting old. I might have forgotten. But, yeah, that's the year that they lost at home to the Dolphins, which was an upset loss. Then they were up 14-0 on the Colts and Peyton Manning, and they lost that game. And then in the press conference immediately on Monday, I think it was, Brad Childers announced that they would be switching to Gus Frerotte, who was actually very, very solid until he fractured his transverse process in Detroit, allowing T-Jack to get back in. And unfortunately, God rest his soul now, the late Tavares Jackson had his struggles after that.
T-Jack.
I'm just amazed by transverse process that you were able to get
transverse.
That out. Transverse. Okay.
How many times did you write that in an article?
It's a bone in your back, but it sounds like a band.
Yeah. It's going to be the name of my pop punk band, I think, when I form it.
It sounds like a band.
Definitely.
When I was a kid, there was a band called the Manhattan Transfer.
Yes.
And I always thought that the transverse process sounded like a great band name, but it's a bone in your back. And if it breaks, I think it's quite painful.
Oof. My tailbone's still not healing up nicely. So we'll just move on from poor backs.
Your kids'
pains.
fault.
It's
your
the
kids are trying
fault.
to get you. The kids are trying to get you. You know what the kids are aware of? The life insurance policy. That's what I hear.
That's probably it. Smart on them. Good on them. Since same way I'm banking on them to take care of me when I'm older.
Yeah, they're
trying
we
to
don't
need to worry about this. We don't need to worry about you.
The kids and husband didn't ask you to sign any new life insurance paperwork recently.
Sometimes I just sign paperwork. That's what they do. They booze me up a little bit, and then I just sign away everything. It's
you know what happens?
Well,
every good date line starts.
Yeah.
Cyclones lose on a Saturday. Mom's upset to start with. I'm not even sure, to be honest, Roscoe, that hubby's involved here. I think it's the kids.
It's definitely the kids. Hudson, he's a charmer, that one. Caden comes in, he's like, but I love you. Just sign here, please, mommy. And I was like, yes. In and out.
Yeah, just already. Are they already forging your signature too in case you won't sign it? Then you're in
it's
trouble.
An easy one. It's a scribble. I am going to sign off on the Minnesota Vikings still being just one game out of first place in the North, courtesy of the Lions and Packers losing on Sunday, which brings us to the all-encompassing question that we've asked ourselves each and every Sunday from here on out. What are the Vikings going to finish? How many wins? How many wins are they going to? And how many wins is it going to take to win the North if this is what we're dealing with already this season? Judd, start with you.
So I was more apoplectic, might be too strong. I was more down on the Vikings after Thursday because, the frustrating thing is they've beaten themselves twice now. Like, these are games that are that I think it's very fair to say if they had played competent football, like the Eagles did not play a great game. But after watching my favorite invention in the whole wide world, the red zone on Sunday, the greatest invention of man, I don't care about anything else. The red zone is the greatest invention. And after watching that, it might take 9 wins. It's not, look, Detroit lost a game that Detroit at home should have won. And I've become convinced. My new hot take on Detroit is this: we're all enamored with them because they don't suck. So like, we're like, oh my God, the Lions don't suck. The Lions could win the division. The Lions are, but I mean, it's still, it's not like they are the Steel Curtain, right? So Detroit is, I think Detroit's okay. But they don't beat Kansas City if Travis Kelce and Chris Jones play in that Thursday night opener, week 1. The Packers completely blew it. And, Jordan Love, it doesn't mean he sucks, but if you guys go back to 2008, which is Aaron Rodgers' first year inheriting the job from Brett Favre, that Packers team was not great. And Rodgers was developing, but this is Jordan Love's first chance. And the Packers are decimated now, I think, on the offensive line. I think 9 or 10 wins. And just to be very clear, I think the Vikings are at worst case going to get to about 7 or 8. But I think 9 or 10 wins could win this division, which to me, Roscoe, looks more and more every day like the American League Central, which is somebody take it because that team don't want it.
Well, it's probably going to be, to your point, Judd, which teams can stay in the race long enough to maybe separate themselves in late November and December. I love what you said about the Lions because there is a big difference between don't suck and actually being good. And it's possible the Lions are just somewhere between an 8-win and on the high end 10-win team that I believe the number is still probably 10. Somebody's likely to probably go 4-2 within the division, which then you start to do the math. They just got to win 6 games elsewhere. So it still feels like 10-7 for me is the number to get to. The Bears will be an opportunity for teams in the division to win games. We've already seen that already this season with Green Bay. And I'm having a tough time processing where the Vikings fall into this. And I'll be honest, where I even want them to fall into on this. There's a part of me that says it would just be a heck of a lot easier if the Vikings are 5-12 or worse. But then when the division is very obtainable, if the Vikings win this upcoming weekend against the Chargers and they're 1-2, and then they go on the road to take on Carolina, well, then you start thinking, well, suddenly they're back at 2-2, and 4 weeks into the season, that might actually have them atop the NFC North, which to Judd's point looks a lot like the American League Central in baseball. So I actually really think, Judd and Jesse, I need to see what the Vikings do on Sunday against the Chargers before I make a decision on how I feel about the intentions of what this Minnesota Vikings team should do the final 14 games of the year. If they win, I guess I'm back in on trying to win the division. If they lose at 0-3 at that point, again, what we talked about last week, you start doing the math, going to be tough to get to 9 or 10 wins. And at that point, again, I'm not saying intentionally lose, but you might want to start making it a little bit more difficult on your team to actually win games, if that makes any sense. And I think, Judd, you've talked about that before, right, Judd? If the players go out and win the game, great, but try and put them in a position where maybe they can't possibly win the game. And we'll see if we get to that point of the season.
Do you guys think that the Detroit Lions are the NFL's version of Deion Sanders and the University of Colorado? Or CU, rather. Colorado University.
How so?
Everybody just loves them, but is it warranted,
yes.
right? Like a double
Yeah.
overtime win against your rival in state. Like that's, I don't know.
Well,
Maybe.
I think the Buffaloes have a lot
Good point.
more like cachet though. Like I think because it's college too, it's more of a production. I think the Lions are just, again, I think it starts with the fans there. They're just like, oh, thank God we don't suck. I mean, keep in mind they got off to a 1-6 start last year.
Mhm.
So it's not like this team is coming off 2 great years, and they started to win games when it didn't matter. And the Chiefs win was impressive, but the loss to Seattle was brutal. That's the other thing too that's so weird here, and why I'm not defending the Vikings because they played 2 really bad games. But what's really weird is, and I was reminded of this in seeing a ton of games as Red Zone spun around the league on Sunday. The league's not good. Like I keep saying this, Phil and I have gotten in debates because he's like, it's parity that's good. I said, no, it's just not good. There's a lot of just crappy teams. There's a lot of, and the other problem too is this: a lot of teams the first month aren't prepared because they didn't play preseason games, practices, and I think we talked about this last week. My big contention is practices are what kill teams because they can't really practice now. Like you can't be in pads for X amount of days, and then you can't hit more than X amount of days. And so in watching a bunch of games on Sunday, it occurred to me again, okay, the Vikings are playing really poorly, but so are a lot of teams. Like the Bengals looked awful.
Mm-hmm.
Are they truly? I don't know. I don't think they're that bad, but there is just a lot of really, really bad football played.
Judd, we brought this up last week, or specifically I, wondering if maybe that was a part of the reason why the Vikings look so poor, because nobody really played in the preseason.
That's
And
right.
I still don't know if I want the team playing in the preseason. I just wish it was more uniform. I wish the league all followed each other in what they were doing. But with what you said, Judd, I think it goes, for me, starts to switch back to, I think teams should maybe want to investigate at least knocking off a little bit of rust in preseason, because you can get away with more. The downside to that, as everybody knows, is it just takes one hit in a wrong direction for some players' season to be over. And I don't think teams want to potentially make that sacrifice. But if the Vikings would have played a little bit in preseason, Judd, and I don't want to give them this out, but I think you can make an assumption maybe they would be 2-0 versus 0-2. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but they've just looked so out of sync. We might get into this later, but it's early. But they're on pace to turn the ball over an insane amount of times. And I think, again, some of that could have been kicked off with a little bit more knocking off some rust in preseason football and in live action.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, maybe if they had done preseason, they wouldn't be on pace for 59.5 turnovers this season, currently averaging 3.5 per game. The NFL record, 56 by the 1965 Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. It's not the losing, it's the way in which they are losing, where it's sloppy play. It's things that should have been worked out by now. It's things that's why we have preseason, right? Yes, of course, there is the concern, especially you want to bubble wrap every single one of your top players. And there certainly are guys that you don't need to see what they can do during the preseason. But maybe work out some of these problems, maybe worry a little bit more about how you're performing than just going out there and being like, well, we're just cutting the numbers down.
The ball possession thing is I don't care if you played in every preseason snap or you showed up on September 10th. The ball possession thing is inexcusable. Like that is a fundamental thing of football. And 7 turnovers, 3 in the first game, and then 4 fumbles in the second game, inexcusable. But to go back to the preseason point, keep in mind the Chiefs played their guys like Patrick Mahomes played in the preseason, and they have not looked great. I really think it's more practice. I think it's what you can't do in practice. And because I don't know that the actual preseason games are key, but because they really can't go hard in practice. And the other thing about the Vikings is, especially offensively, personnel wise, they are definitely a different team. They're, use far more 2 tight end and a running back set, where last year they deferred way more often to the Rams 3 receiver set. The Vikings are a personnel wise, offensively built to be tough, but they're not a tough team. And that's my other problem. These lines are not tough. And look at Philadelphia and like San Francisco, they want to kick your ass. Mm-hmm. They want you to leave beat up, and they will beat you up. The Vikings are built like they want to, but they don't. And the scariest thing for me beyond the fumbles against Philadelphia on Thursday night was this: the 2 lines, the offensive and defensive line, were awful. Mm-hmm. Like they were absolutely awful. And that series on which Philadelphia ran 16 plays, 13 runs, and never had like a huge run, but just death by paper cuts. Whatever the Vikings were doing, I don't get it one bit. I went back and charted that entire series just to see who was used when. And Harrison Phillips was basically a lot of times the only true down lineman throughout that series. And it, 3 plays in, it was clear that Philadelphia was going to run the ball up the middle consistently. So like, these are the things from a coaching standpoint too, I don't get, but this team, in my opinion right now, is not tough. And teams like Philadelphia and in a few weeks, San Francisco will kick your butt if you're not tough.
Well, not only that, you talk about the run game. DeAndre Swift had 175 yards and a touchdown. And we know Philly loves to punch it through, But so does Los Angeles, and so do the Carolina Panthers the next 2 games. So what is Brian Flores going to do with the pieces that he has? I mean, adjustments have to be coming, and I don't know what, though, because the past 2 weeks, what we have seen, it's just like, I don't know. Can you get to the 8 or 9 clip mark for wins this year with the way that they performed the past 2 weeks? I would suggest otherwise.
When I look at the defense, Judd, the first thing that I notice, or the first thing that I think about, besides the part where they're maybe just a tad bit soft, especially in the middle on the defensive line, I start to wonder, what did Brian Flores see, or what attracted him to this position? Was it truly painting with the blank canvas? Because somebody like Brian Flores wants to be a head coach again. Well, if this defense is a disaster or only slightly better than last year's defense, he won't be a head coach after this season. So did he maybe take this job with the understanding it's a 2-3 year rebuild on the defensive side? Because I don't know how you fix that soft part, specifically on the Chargers. I think that's what's terrifying about this game. If this game was on the road for the Minnesota Vikings, even though going to LA is not a super difficult place to play, it's almost a home game for teams like the Vikings. When you still factor in the travel, I would say the game probably favors the Chargers. I give the Vikings a decent, reasonable chance to win on Sunday, and I think if they don't turn the ball over 3 to 4 times, they probably should. But yeah, Eckler, Keenan Allen, Herbert, those are just 3 of them. I don't know how you scheme or game plan for that, because somebody like Eckler, it's not just in the run game, it's in the passing game. And I worry about the inexperience of the defensive backs, which actually largely held up decent against Philly. They were put in some bad positions. I think one thing we haven't spent a ton of time on is how good Brian Murphy Jr. has looked, but he's basically the exception at this point. Teams are going to pick on the Caleb Evans. They're going to pick on the younger guys. And by the way, insert old joke here, Lewis Seen, have we seen him? He never plays. I mean, they get nothing out of their first and second round picks from last year. That can't happen. I mean, you can't draft 2 guys in the first and second round that are supposed to be key cogs on a defense you were going to transition out of older players to younger players. And you haven't gotten nothing out of them. Whatever is the next step up from nothing is what they've gotten out of these guys. And that can't happen either.
I'd agree. I mean, one person that is working out well, though, Jordan Addison. Can we just do a round of applause? Can we call him our wide receiver 2 with the duo of him and JJ?
The team needs to first.
Yeah,
God,
exactly.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's what
Can
I'm
the
saying.
team
Like,
please do that?
Can we stop saying KJ? I feel bad. I liked KJ heading into camp. I was like, all right, KJ, let's prove it. I like you. I like what you could do. The past 2 weeks, I don't want him to come anywhere near a ball. Not that he has, because he fumbles it worse than my kids fumble their own dinner, but like, it's brutal. Jordan Addison, however, I think has been absolutely tremendous. Has gotten his touchdowns, has gotten his runs. How happy are we that Addison and JJ are going to be a dual threat for the Vikings, at least for the next couple of years to come?
Well, Jordan from day one to me, including in training camp, looked like he had something special. He makes it look seamless, if that makes sense. Like, there's certain guys that just make their job look as simple as possible. I think he runs good routes. He obviously is good. Yes, I would like to see him 100%, starting with the Chargers game, the number 2 guy. And you know what? KJ as a 3, that's fine. He's a 3. That's no problem. You didn't take Jordan Addison in the first round to have him just try to win that job. You took him because you thought he would. And I think he's proven enough now. But here's a scary thing that needs to also, on the flip side, get fixed offensively, is the run game. I think they've run something like 26 times in 2 games. And I think against Philadelphia, it looked like play action still worked, Jesse. But at some point soon here, if they can't actually run the ball, teams aren't going to bite. Linebackers aren't going to bite. They're just going to all stay back and be like, okay, run the ball. You know what? If Alex can get 5 or 6 yards, God bless him. But we don't think he can get that. And it's not all his fault. The offensive line has been bad. So all of that being said, if they can't stop the run and they can't run, they're going to be toast. They're going to be absolute toast. But that's also effort in some ways and schematics. So, like, yes, it's concerning, and yes, it's on film. But I expect, and if KOC has to stop being the good cop. I'm fine with that. I expect that Chargers game to have a certain amount of intensity and a certain amount of desperation, that a fire is lit under these guys, because now is the time to light said fire.
Almost any team, Judd, NFL, college football does this too. You hear this all the time. New coach comes in, new leader of a program comes in. One of the first things they say is we have to stop the run and we have to be able to run the football. Well, right now the Vikings can't do either of those. And then again, aside from the turnovers, another reason why you're 0-2. Look, we talked about it on this pod a few weeks back. Should the Vikings bring in Kareem Hunt? Should the Vikings bring in insert running back here? Well, I think at this point of the season now, as we record here on September 18th, if they were going to do that, they would have by now. And secondly to that, I think they believe the issues are more with the actual offensive line than the running backs, or maybe they would have made that move by now. And again, Judd, I don't know how that gets better when Garrett Bradbury, historically better run blocker than pass blocker, isn't playing. Darrisaw might still be out for some time. Ed Ingram, what more do I need to say? I don't know how you're going to fix that on the fly. So are they going to have to manufacture things like more screen passes, even though those worked out so well against the Eagles last Thursday? Or are you doing end arounds? You're doing more plays where you're getting your wide receivers involved. I don't know how that gets fixed in a heartbeat. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think also in regards to the offensive line, are they looking outside of the building? Like, are they going to address this problem, right? We had talked about, I mean, the free agent market, not great. There's not, I think you got Ben Jones for center available, maybe Billy Price. Dalton Risner, didn't he come make a little visit? Didn't he say he'd come? Do you think, Judd, the Vikings will look to upgrade that position, namely because, as we've pointed out numerous times on this podcast and across our Purple Daily channels, it is so bad. Like, I'll give credit to Kirk Cousins. I'm hard on him quite often, but the O-line is doing him absolutely -3 favors on making him look any better.
I wouldn't be shocked if they, at some point in time here, claimed a guy like off a practice squad. But do I think that they're going to make a move for a name that we all know? No, I don't. And it disturbs me. And I think there's as many questions right now from a standpoint of who's at fault here, if we're going to start to dole out blame with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, because, as Ross said, his first 2 draft picks, and they're his, those first 2 draft picks, I mean, Cena and Booth have just been absolute busts. Ingram plays a ton, but he is a bust right now. So I don't have a lot of faith there. I do, however, think that my concern is this: Bradbury's got a bad back and he's a center. Like, that's not conducive to returning soon. And Schlotman, he's just a backup. He is just a jag, just a guy. So I do have big concerns unless they think that they can scheme around it. And to what Ross was saying, I do think offensively, you've got to get more creative. You've got to start to do things that if you watch games, a lot of teams will at least plant a seed of doubt with what they do from the personnel standpoint of formations and stuff. Vikings don't do that a ton. If I'm Kevin O'Connell against the Chargers, I think I'm getting creative just to provide a spark and to provide looks that teams have not seen. So as far as going out though and actively like picking up a guy that they could plug in to start, no, I don't see it. I think at this point in time, there might be a better chance the Vikings are sellers as the deadline approaches than buyers. But the fact that the league is bad actually probably gives them cause for pause on both things. They might say what the Twins said, which is, we're going to give our guys a chance to prove that they actually care about the sport.
Tackle Brian O'Neill, the only O-lineman to grade above a 65.5 on PFF's grading system, 86.2 through 2 games. The rest
Not
of
good.
them, awful. In fact, we had a fantastic comment from YouTube, Ross, that we could bring up to even further discuss and delve into how awful and atrocious this O-line is.
Comments from YouTube.
Jeff, you have become the segue master. Very, very well done. From, oh boy, I think I butchered the guy's name. I believe it was Jeremy Shock, which made me laugh because it made me think of Jeremy Shockey. 3471. Our offensive line hasn't been good in years. When is someone going to figure that out? So here's my thought, and there's a question wrapped up in here, so sit tight. Perhaps the weakest link, as we've talked about, Ed Ingram, 2022 draft pick, has a current grade of 49 out of 100 from PFF. Fair to say the Vikings have tried to fix the offensive line in recent years, Judd, but they've largely just failed. Again, Bradbury, first rounder. Ezra Cleveland, second rounder. Ed Ingram, third rounder. You expect those guys to play and contribute. They're not always playing, and one could argue they're really not always contributing.
So across, I mean, to that point, and he's exactly right. The offensive line is high draft picks. So yes, they've just whiffed miserably. Bradbury, was in no way, shape, or form was he a first round pick. The two guards, Cleveland's okay. Ingram at this point's a disaster. The tackles are good, but and this is a Spielman pick and a Kwesi pick. But you know what else hurts too? You've now used in the last 5 or 6 years, a first round pick on Garrett Bradbury, a center, which is not a first round position unless you get a guy that's going to immediately go to Canton, and a safety, which again is not a first round position unless you get a guy who's going to make a difference in year one, not who's going to be on the bench in year two. So it's also like the deterioration of draft picks and the decisions on where to take guys. But yeah, they've tried. They have just, for the most part, other than the two tackles, failed miserably.
Care to weigh in there, Jesse? I think
No,
Judd summed it up pretty well.
He summed it up great. It's so frustrating. Fix it. Fix the problem.
Well, and for years, Judd, you'll remember this. It's changed slightly in recent memory, but if you took any lineman in the first round, whether they were the first pick or the 25th pick, they almost always panned out to be 7 to 10 year starters. For some reason, the Vikings have struggled in that category. Even when we thought they got it right, if you go back to Matt Khalil, it ended up being wrong.
Yeah.
He was great for his first year. Yeah. And
yeah. Well,
barely to ever be heard from again.
Tackles, and especially left tackles, are first round picks. But centers and guards, you should be able to find them. And I mean, the sad thing is to fail across the board. That's what gets me. If Cleveland was a Pro Bowl player, because if he was, he would solidify the line, right? The interior.
Yep.
If one of those three, if Bradbury, Cleveland, or Ingram was just a Pro Bowl guy that would kick your butt, okay, the other two guys might not be great, but that one player helps a lot. Case in point, Steve Hutchinson. Steve Hutchinson, Hall of Fame guard, signed to a huge contract here, but guess what he did? That entire line improved because that guy was an SOB on game day and was fantastic at what he did. And that's the thing too. Interior linemen have to have a huge edge. They have to be semi-crazy. And I don't know that the Vikings have. I mean, you got to love football, and you got to love the fact that unfortunately, probably by the tender age of 55, you might not be walking because your knees are shot. That's a hard life to live. I would personally not do it, but a lineman when you see one.
One more for you both. This comes from Disc Golf Details 9889. Let Kirk walk. Draft Shedeur Sanders. In case you two missed it, Colorado won their third national championship of the season this past Saturday. Just ask the mothership and all the other outlets. Sanders threw for another 348 yards and 4 TDs in Colorado's win over lowly Colorado State. Jesse and Judd, are you buying Shedeur Sanders as a top NFL prospect and somebody the Vikings should be looking to as the heir apparent at quarterback?
Where does he rank in Dion's list of kids? Because Dion ranks his kids, so I'm wondering where he's on Dion's.
I love that quote.
Oh my God, It's so great. It's brilliant. He's absolutely right.
We want to know about your kid rankings.
Yeah,
we want to know. Rank your kid, Jesse.
I mean, the girl will always be number one, as stubborn as she is. I mean, that's just how it goes. She's going to be the one to take care of me. The boys are not going to take care of me.
Yeah,
the girl
right.
will and daughter will take care of me. So she is always number one. And then the boys flip flop. It depends on the day. It depends on the hour. Let's be honest. It's very clear. So it's facts.
What the boys
you don't rank your
do,
kids,
though?
you're lying. Dion said it. I agree. We all have.
The boys will listen when the sister calls up and says, we got to move mom and dad this week. We got to move mom to a home.
One will. I bet both won't. And the smart one moves.
Yeah.
The smart one moves a long ways away.
Falls in love with his wife's family, never sees us, always is with her family. That's exactly what.
Although you have to be careful because the problem with the girl is when she hits 13, She's not
Oh, yeah.
gonna like you.
Thoughts
No.
and prayers,
so
Jesse.
and so like you better keep her close because that's a tough age, and you two could have a falling out, and now the Sun's got to move up that list.
I know. We're gonna again. It's a rotating cast. It's like a merry-go-round over here as far as who I like, who I don't
I
like.
love the
that
fact you
day.
ranked them.
Yeah, I mean, we all do. Mentally, I'm like, I don't like you right now. I love you. I just don't like you right
Well,
now.
that's like your spouse.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you don't
that's
always like
part
your
of life.
spouse.
Kind of
It's-
like a lot of people watching this podcast or listening to it.
Yeah.
They love us. They love the show. They don't like us.
Yeah,
Or they love to hate the show. Are you
It's tough
buying
love.
are you buying or selling on Shedeur?
I'm by. I mean, he's a lot of fun to watch, and I will give this. I think the infatuation, if you will, with Colorado, it is kind of cool. I mean, Deion's doing his thing, and the thing about Deion
It's
Sanders,
fun.
I think
It is fun.
he's very authentically him. This is what I was telling somebody. I'm like, he's obnoxious, sure, but he's never not been. Like that's how he was as a player. That's just exactly who he is. So he hasn't changed at all, good, bad, or the other way. It's just he's Deion Sanders, and that's how he's going to behave, and that's how he's going to act, and whatever for however the record ends up going. And you're right, I think it gets exhausting hearing about like, oh, they won another game, like in double overtime where they were favored by like 24
Yeah, and they stormed the
points.
field, which
Yes.
is BS.
Like it's just a little sad, but at the same time, it's bringing some excitement to college football. It's bringing excitement in Boulder. I've been to Boulder, fantastic place to go watch a football game, go enjoy some college town stuff. Yeah, all of the above. Whatever you fancy for recreational activities in Boulder, it's a great place to do it. I would say though, yeah, I think he will be a top NFL prospect. Do I want the Vikings to go out and get him? I don't know, but I mean, maybe.
I'm buying. I'm impressed. And
He can sling it. He really can.
And here's the thing,
Right
too.
windows.
here's the thing too, and I might be totally wrong because I will always preface this by saying we don't know people, like we don't know him as a person, but as a player, and like what I see post game, I sort of like him. He seems to be a little bit of a toned down, just a bit version of his dad. He sort of has a quarterback demeanor that I like. So I am buying there, and I do think that this whole thing with the Buffs is great fun. I would say this: enjoy it, because I think Deion is going to burn out eventually. Like it's not gonna this is not a 5-year thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's also older. He's not
he could be with
super
the
old, but he's
Cowboys in
older.
3 years.
Yeah. He's
I could see
friends
Jerry
with Tom
Jones.
Brady. Tom Brady
Yeah.
said he wants to do a Shedeur. Like it's, I mean,
Yeah.
when you get the backing of the GOAT.
It's fun though.
Gotta appreciate
It's fun.
it.
That Colorado State game on Saturday night was nasty, by the way.
That was-
I don't know if you guys
I don't know how was it Blackman with the ugly hit along the sidelines?
to Hunter.
To
Yeah.
Hunter?
I
Yeah.
saw
Hunter's great.
I saw a comment on Twitter replying to that game, and it just said Coach Prime versus Coach Crime, and I laughed pretty hard just because of
Oh,
I don't-
funny.
I don't know if many of those plays were as dirty as people wanted to make them out to be, but Colorado State clearly came into that with hey, we also play in this state too, and it seems like they must like their coach, because you can tell they were really trying to make sure that Colorado couldn't put a number on them.
The Blackman hit was brutal. Like that was
Yeah.
circa 1976.
It was late, and
Totally
nothing about
unnecessary.
it was, like there
Exactly.
was not a
It's an old
darn.
hockey hit.
Yeah, exactly. We like
It's an old
One-
hockey hit.
One follow-up for you two: Gophers fall to Drake May in North Carolina over the weekend. I don't know. Sounds like Judd watched it. Don't know if you watched much of it, Jesse. Will the Vikings have May in April? What are your thoughts on Drake May wearing purple, or just Drake May in general after watching him carve up the seemingly what we all think is a pretty good Gopher football defense? He had a couple of bad interceptions, but I would classify those interceptions as coachable, Judd. I think you can coach those out of him. That first touchdown pass that he threw, the safety got beat just a little bit, but he still threw that thing on a dime, one-footed, rolling to his right. There are quarterbacks in the NFL that can't make that pass.
3rd and 14. He has what the scouts call arm talent, which I like a lot. The 2 picks did scare me because they were really the
second
one
was really
a
atrocious.
stupid pass.
Mhm.
I like the size. I love the size. The reckless abandon would need to be, I would hope, reined in, because I think in a professional game he would get hurt. but I like the attributes. I did like what I saw. I don't know that he belongs attached to Caleb Williams as closely, because, to start the year, it was Caleb and Drake. I think there's a pretty big gap there, but Drake May intrigues me. And if I was the Vikings, I would not be upset if he was put on my doorstep.
No, I mean, he's got over 400 yards, 2 in 2 straight games or something like that. Like kid can sling it. I like it.
And I think I do believe the Gophers defense to be pretty good. I don't know if by the end of the year it's going to be, top 10, top 15 in the country, but I do believe they're a very functional defense. So it was impressive. Judd, I saw that first touchdown pass on Saturday. I went, yeah, this is all I need to know that the Gophers are going to have a really tough time.
Did you turn it off?
No, I kept it. I love the pain. Same with Gopher football. I'll watch every second of every game. So
I turned the Iowa game off. It was awful. It was so bad. Like And
what was up with Ethan on Saturday? He couldn't hit an open receiver from 5 yards away.
He was terrible on Saturday. He was absolutely awful.
Brutal. That was bad.
Yeah. And then allowing Cole Kramer to throw that one pass is one of the dumbest decisions in Minnesota sports I've seen in the last 5 years.
We've seen a lot of them. We have seen a lot of them. Hence why we have started this Before I Die podcast, because we see the pain, we feel the pain, but it's okay. We are here to help you through that, as is All Score North's Purple Daily content. You can find new episodes each and every week, including Before I Die every single Monday, wherever you listen or view your podcast. That's going to do it for us this week, you guys. Appreciate you checking us out, tuning in. Drop your thoughts, see what's going on. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. We need to do our Before I Dies because Ross was going to yell at me, and I didn't forget. I was going to not forget at all.
Oh, now you're lying to me. The last time you didn't. This time you totally did.
I did.
And the reason why, I'm going to play the open here, but there's a reason why. I have something near and dear to my heart that I need to get off of my chest.
Time now for the Before I Die crew to give us their Before I Dies.
Can I just start?
Yeah, you got to kick us off.
Okay.
That's why we're waiting.
This message goes out to a certain provider that is largely big in the state of Minnesota that provides hot eats and cold treats. Bring the cherry dipped cone back. I don't care that we got rid of it because there's some cancerous element to it. Anything you eat at that place is terrible for you. Bring the cherry dipped cone back. The chocolate's boring. Butterscotch is a nice change of pace. We need the cherry dip cone back, though. It's ludicrous that we're getting rid of it because of the dye that's in there. Have you looked at the nutrition facts of the other food? Bring the cherry dipped cone back.
Can you still get the dilly bars in cherry?
I'm actually not even aware of that, but I don't want that because I don't like the stick. The stick gives me the willies. If I touch that thing, I cringe. I need the cherry. I just can't do it. Can't touch a popsicle stick. Can't touch a corn dog stick. I immediately gag when they test you for strep and they put that tongue depress.
But the stick's got the food on it, so the stick's not the stick is not.
But if you touch it, I cringe. So
there's so many things I want to say, but I'm not gonna say them.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of dirty things you could say there too. So I get it. But just bring the cherry dipped cone back. It's Dairy Queen. We're not going to Crispin Green. We're going to Dairy Queen. Bring the cherry dipped cone back.
Unpopular opinion. I'm not a soft serve ice cream.
I'm just covering
fan.
my mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not?
Oh God, no. Give me like real ice cream. I don't.
I love real ice cream too. I look. I'll eat ice cream when it's -30, and I'll have soup when it's 120. I love them both.
So do you just like normal ice cream more than soft serve, or do you actively not like soft serve?
I actively don't like soft serve. I try to figure out so there's this very famous, legendary, if you will, ice cream shop here in downtown White Bear Lake, and people just fawn over this place.
They do have a cherry dipped cone, by the way.
I bet they do. Lines around the corner, and I've always been like, it's fine. I don't really love it that much. I don't like it. And I finally, this summer, after years of going to this place, because it's the cool hangout when you were a kid, I was like, I don't like soft serve ice cream. I just don't like it at all. Like, not even a little bit, not even covered in things. It's just kind of, hard pass. So before I die, We will remove all soft serve ice cream from all places around
You
the
don't need to
world.
remove it.
And
No,
just
yeah, get it
just
out
for
of my
me
way.
to make it official, I
YouTube.
went on this massive rant, and I didn't even qualify that. Yes, before I die, that hot
back.
eats and cool treats place will bring the cherry dip cone
First,
back.
bring the treats of pizza back. Then I can worry about
That
your-
was also
your thing,
great.
all
The
right?
treats.
Like,
Oh, and can the s'mores blizzard just be year round?
it probably can be if you know. Just tell them to put it in.
How much
Judd?
of this do you eat?
Oh, God, look at me. Too much.
You're not that big.
Too much.
You're not that big.
John, what do you got? You got any other complaints with said food chain in town?
Oh, you know what? No, here's mine, because this has been a frequent topic, especially on our Score North Twin show, but I will bring it here. Before I die, I want the immaculate grid to only be teams of guys that played. So instead of like, an Oriole that played for a Tiger, an Oriole that drove in 100 runs, an Oriole that won a Gold Glove, and nobody gives a crap about the Gold Glove. I don't care. I love baseball. I don't care. The Gold Glove's the Gold Glove's crap. It's voted on by managers. It's won by guys who don't deserve it. Make your immaculate grid two things. Number one, make it all teams. So I'm matching team to team. I don't want to match players, silver slugger. Take your silver slugger and shove it. The other thing I want is this. If you're going to have a special category, replace some of the crap that you currently do with guys who spent their entire career, I would say 5 to 10 or 5 or more years, probably 10 though, with one team. Like if you're going to get creative, so like a twin that played his entire career 10 years or more as a twin, because at least then I've got a fighting chance. A silver slugger and Gold Glove, I honest to God do not care. So the immaculate grid, like today again in baseball, it had I think an Orioles category and 3 teams, and then everything else was specialized. No, the immaculate grid is all about testing who played for whom, and same with a hockey grid, and same with a football grid. 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Everyone and their father has a 1,000-yard rushing season.
And it is really fun to try and think of who is the obscure Minnesota Twin that played for both the Rays and Twins. That's
Jason
fun
Bartlett.
stuff. Or
look
at you, Twins and Mariners.
Dave Hollins.
I think I'd go with Brett Boone.
Okay, that's fair.
But I think a lot of people would remember that, right? I don't know.
I don't know. Wild and Blackhawks.
Ryan Hartman.
Yeah, it's a good one. See, this is way more fun than
Kim
the wild
Janssen.
guy who had. Yeah.
Oh, Kim Janssen. Woof.
Kim Janssen. Oh,
Woof.
Cam Barker.
Cam Barker.
Cam Barker.
Havlet.
Nick Leddy.
Nick Leddy.
Oh, he's in the
Never-
organization.
Never
but we
played
didn't
for the
play.
Wild though.
Yep,
No.
he didn't play. Yep.
Never played a game for the Wild. You
Yeah.
got that wrong. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that the hard way.
Oh. Well, we're just smarter than the grid is what we are.
That's all.
That's
You can
might
hear our
be.
smartness again every single Monday here on Before I Die. Don't forget to check out the rest of our Purple Daily Show. Have some fun with us. Enjoy us, like us, because we're not going to stop. We're going to be here each and every week. So appreciate you checking us out. Appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe, rate, like, share, and go Vikings against the Los Angeles Chargers at noon on Sunday.
Jags couldn't get it done in Duval County, but the Vikings will this weekend in Hennepin.